أزهر العجائب.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله على سيدنا مولانا حبيب الله العالمين أبو القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، ولعنة الله على القوم الظالمين من الأولين والآخرين. ما بعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum to all of you here in the Nahjal Balagha book club. Welcome back, alhamdulillah. Yes, it's a Friday. This is the Wednesday group, I know, but thank you so much for making the time out of the end of your week for the book club. And what a sermon to look at. So what we said last week, if you recall, in this group, and this is to anyone who's in this Zoom call, or if you are following live on Facebook on the Al-Noor page, or if you're following on the Monthly Reflections podcast, wherever you are listening, we agreed that last week we are going through the different principles of faith in the words of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Okay, so we looked at Tawheed, we looked at Adl. If you recall, we looked at the letter to Malik al-Ashtar. We looked at Nubuwah in the way the Holy Prophet was. We looked to some extent at the way of this world and dunya, only so that we can look today at Imamat. Our plan being that we want to understand Imamat in the words of Imam Ali alayhi salam. What is his maqam? What is Imamat? What is this principle of faith which we have? In the way the Imam describes his own position, not in attributes which we may assign to him, not in the words of the poets, not in the words of the endless praises from Ali alayhi salam and his dhikr. No, we want to know how he refers to himself. And to do this, we selected Shiqshiqiyah, a sermon which perhaps has been the most repeated one in mainstream Islamic studies, because you hear on the minbar, you hear Shiqshiqiyah quoted by ulama, by scholars, especially in defending our creed, our belief. And I have no doubt that there are people here. Let me see who's actually, look at your names. Some of you who maybe I know. I have no doubt that maybe you have heard the sermon of Shiqshiqiyah in different contexts. You've heard it being recited. You've heard it being used in lectures, for example. It's a very famous, very powerful, very potent, and unique piece of oratory from the Imam. He very rarely speaks in the tone which he does in the sermon, which we're about to look at. And it's a phenomenal speech to understand the mentality of the Imam, his decision-making, how he thought at key moments in his life. And indeed, it charts the period of history from the death of the Holy Prophet until the moment of Imam alayhi salam's appointment as Khalifa. So how did he feel when the Prophet died? When Saqifa happened, when the first of them ruled, when Umar ruled, when Uthman ruled, and then when he assumed the role of Khalifa at the end. And what is his feeling now while speaking? Okay. Shiqshiqiyah has multiple chains of narrations. It has been through multiple debates in questions of sanad and chain. If you're interested in those sanad discussions, you can ask a question if you are interested in it. But also, there'll be another discussion posted on the YouTube channel of kind of Shiqshiqiyah part 2. Of a discussion which I had between myself and Brother Bilal Muhammad, who's a writer and researcher, and we discussed Shiqshiqiyah as well, and that will go online, inshallah, if you want to hear more about the chain and the analysis and the history of it. And it's because of this one sermon and how powerful it is that people want to disregard the entirety of Nahjal Balagha. They cannot accept this book, because if they accept these words from the Imam, so much of their belief of how Imam Ali was goes out of the window. You can no longer believe Imam Ali alayhi salam tolerated or allowed or was happy with the leaders before him. You can no longer believe he believed they were even legitimate to rule. The one who claims that we need to accept and acknowledge the authority of the Khulafa before the Imam, they lose the argument the moment you bring Shiqshiqiyah to them. In fact, I remember being in a debate with a Sunni in a climate I did not want to be in, but I was just there. And he was quoting Shiqshiqiyah to me by saying, look, your Imam has said this, that he accepted the existence of the Khulafa before him. He quoted like half a sentence of a 3-page or 2-page sermon. So I said, no, keep reading the rest of it. He didn't know the rest of it. So I carried on and filled in the gap, in which the Imam so blatantly and so openly disassociates himself from the first 3 Khulafa before him and Banu Umayyah and those affiliated to them. And when he reasserts his own position, his own maqam, you see the glory of Imamat. You see the power of Imamat in the way he speaks about himself. We should all know Shiqshiqiyah. We should all learn it. We have one very beautiful story from Ayatollah Marashi Najafi who says, Imam Zamana himself told me to memorize Shiqshiqiyah. Agha Marashi Najafi says this. Maybe he realized after it was the Imam, but he says, our Imam, Imam Zamana, wants us to know this sermon. It encapsulates our aqidah. And now if I add to that, our children need to know this sermon. We need to know it, not just the sound bites we get from the mimbar, not just the 1 minute videos we share. We need to know the entirety of the sermon. And so if I have your permission, I would love to, inshallah, go through Shiqshiqiyah with you, if I have your support, inshallah, and see how the Imam reacts. Okay, before I begin, just so you know, this is sermon number 3 of Nahjal Balagha. Okay, so sermon 1, the creation of the world. Sermon 2, the Prophet. Sermon 3, the Imams, Ahl al-Bayt, and what the role of Imam Ali al-Islam is. So if you have your copy with you, your hard copy or your online copy, we're looking at sermon 3. Let me set the scene. Some ulama believe Imam Ali is just walking. Some believe he's just sitting, but he's in a very small and intimate group. There's not that many people there. Ibn Abbas is there. His servant is there. A few other companions are named. But other than that, it's a very small, very tight group. And while they're either walking or while they're sitting, the Imam just feels like speaking. So he just begins and says, Amma wallahu laqad tamassaha ibn Abi Quhafa. By Allah, the son of Abi Quhafa, yani Abu Bakr, clothed himself with it. It's yani khilafa. Imam's just walking. Imagine he's just walking. He just says this. So you can imagine they turn their attention to him and they look towards him and he says, وَإِنَّا لَا يَعْلَمُ عَنْ مُحَلِّ مِنْهَا مُحَلُّ قُطْبٍ مِنَ الرَّخَاء. And he knew that my relation to it was closer and was as close as the axis to the hand mill. In those days, you had a mill which you would turn. And when you turn it, it would pivot. And the middle of that pivot, which you would turn, was an axis. He says he knew that my relation to Khalifa is like this pivot, this central thing to it. He knew. Then he continues, ينحدر عني السيل ولا ترقي إلى الطير. And he knew that the flood water flows from me and the birds cannot even come and reach me. And this is the maqam of the Imam in which he's speaking about himself. فسدلت دونها ثوبا. So I placed between me and it, Khilafah, a thawb, a barrier, a veil. وطويت عنها كشحا. And I chose to keep myself detached from it. I chose. وتفقت. And I started thinking. أرتئي بين أن أصول بيد الجداح أو أصبر. Do I choose to assault and take this Khilafah back for myself? Or do I choose patience? أو أصبر على تخيتي عميا. Even though this patience would be in a time of tribulation for me. What's tribulation for him? The tribulation for him is يحرم فيها الكبير ويشيب فيها الصغير ويقته فيما مؤمن حتى يلقى ربه. Tribulation is that thing in which the old people become feeble and weak, and the young people become old when they go through tribulation. But he says the mu'min is the one who strives يقته فيها مؤمن حتى يلقى الله, until they meet Allah. That's the true mu'min. The verse of the Quran says, يا أيها الإنسان إنك كادح كدحا إلى ربك فملاقيه. You are striving, you are working hard to meet your Lord. This life is not easy. Imam says it's not going to be easy for me, this tribulation I have to go through. That same tribulation which you have gone through, I'm speaking to you now, when you have seen elderly people become weak and young people in front of you become old because of how hard life can be. He's saying, I can choose this. I can choose patience, or I can choose to rise. So let's stop for a second. This is the mentality of the Imam just while thinking about this issue to himself and almost speaking aloud. He took Khilafah. It was clothed not for him. It was made for me, for the Imam. But he wore it, even though he knew my maqam is so close to it. And he knew that Imam Islam, speaking about himself, the water flows from me. The ilm of the Imam it just keeps flowing. Saluni, saluni qabla an tafqaduni. Ask me before you lose me. That's the Imam. And he knew that the birds cannot reach me. The level I'm at, he can't reach it, but he still took it knowing this. So what do I do? Now, this metaphor of clothing is very useful because we believe that Khilafah
3 मैंने बढ़ी है सर 68 की होने 68 जून बढ़ी है मेरे से
We believe that Khilafah is a part of the authority of the Imam. He should be in power. He should be in authority. It is by his right. And it is made perfectly for him in the way that clothing can be stitched perfectly for a person. Whereas when that same clothing is placed on the body of someone who is lesser than him, it doesn't fit right. It looks loose on him. It's too tight on him. It doesn't belong to him. It belongs to me, Ali is saying. So he has to make a choice. What do I do? And what did he choose? He says, فَرَأَيْتُ أَنْ أَصْبَرُ عَلَى حَاتَ أَحْجَانٍ. I chose patience. I thought patience was the wise option for me. We have narrations from the Holy Prophet in which he told Islam that when the time comes, I advise you, I urge you to choose patience, to use sabr. That same Ali who is used to fighting on the battlefield at Badr, at Uhud, at Hunayn, and in another battle he says that I am the same young man that you saw in Badr when I fight you now in Siffin. It's not hard for the Imam to uprise if he wanted to, if he thought it was wise. But he says, La, فرأيت أن أصبر على حتى أحجى. It wasn't wise at that time. فصبرت, so I was patient. وفي عيني قذيا وفي خلق شجعا. Even though it was a thorn in my eye and suffocation in my throat, I chose patience. أرى تراثي نحبا. I saw them plunder my inheritance. حتى مضى الأول لسبيلي, until the first of them went on his path. يعني he died. فأدلى بها إلى ابن الخطاب بعده. And then after him, Ibn al-Khattab continued right where he left off. They continued. He left the inheritance to him and he carried on plundering my wealth. ثم تمثل يقول الأعشى. Imam Ali Islam then quotes a piece of poetry from Al-A'sha, the Shair, who says, شتان ما يومي عاي كورها ويوم حيان أخي جابر. He says, my days have now passed like on the camel's back. Where are the days of ease when I was enjoying the company of Jabir's brother Hayyan? I was going to say hanging out with Jabir's brother Hayyan, but no, enjoying with Jabir. Yani, where are those days where things were easier? But my days have passed now. I have seen what has happened in front of me. The first came, and the Imam says, I had to watch and feel as if there was a thorn in my eye. Have you ever noticed that when something's in your eye, how irritated you are? How that particular sensation prickles and hurts so much? Bring me water, bring something, clear my eye. That's how the Imam felt every single day in seeing Khilafah being used against the mu'mineen, against the believers, against the mustadafin, against those who were poor. Why? Because wealth was plundered. Wealth which should have belonged to the people was kept. And then the first one went on his path. Abu Bakr died. Then comes Omar. Same thing, Imam says. Same thing. The wealth which should have been for the people was plundered in front of my eyes. So let's take a little pause here. Who has any thoughts about how the Imam is speaking? Who, by listening, and feel free to either unmute or raise your hand or use the chat, or if you're watching Facebook, you can write. But like, how is the Imam in your eyes? What is he thinking? What can we learn about the Imam just from how he's began speaking? What do we think about the Imam's speech right now? For those of you who are reading or listening, what are your general thoughts of what you've heard so far? Are there any points which are particularly powerful for you, the Imam says? Or how do we find the Imam so far? What could we learn? What stands out to you from what's been said?
Can I say something about?
Yes, of course.
Yes. In the first sentences, I know you have just read it, but I just want to repeat the one sentence which I find it just amazing.
Yeah.
It says, a bird does not rise higher than me. It only takes Ali to say that. Nobody, but obviously Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's above Ali. But you take a man to say that, who has witnessed the creation of the world. He didn't say a bird can fly, a bird can rise, not as high as me. And also, just listening to your last few minutes, we hear about Sabr Ayyub. We hear about the courage and bravery of Hazrat Abbas. and the bravery of Imam Ali. Imam Ali, won the Battle of Khandaq. He took the Khaybar with his fingers, 2 or 3 fingers. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the bravery of Imam Ali was to keep the patience, had the patience while the other 3 people were, running the country or had the caliphate, and he was quiet. That is the bravery, much more than Khandaq and Khaybar. So the lesson here is, if you want to learn something from Imam Ali, is not just the bravery, it's the patience, because for an ordinary person like me, being patient is not a big deal, because I don't have the courage or the himmat to do much. But a man who's lifted the Khaybar, for him to keep quiet and let, I would say, people who are not incapable people,
Yeah.
and keep quiet for the sake of the ummah, that is bravery.
Yeah. It's not those big gestures, those big moments which stand out when you contemplate. It's the everyday struggle, right?
Exactly. And to be quiet for 25 years is a long time. It's a very long time.
Yeah, well, now we are seeing what the cost of that approach was, because it was definitely the wise approach, but it had
Of
a
course.
cost to the Imam. And in fact, he doesn't always speak about how it felt. Islam he just gets on with the job. You know how the Imam is. He'll give judgments if he's asked. He will fight if needed. He will defend if needed. He will do his duty no matter what happens. No unit of measurement goes unplaced without him. No candle burns unless it's burning from his own wealth and not Baytul Mal. No dinar is confiscated unless it goes back to public treasury. No slave is given a punishment or is kept under control unless they have a right to be free. He's so meticulous, but now he's just speaking about how it feels, and it feels hard for him, and people have agreed with you in the chat. I'm seeing 2 comments. One is, he chose to be patient. Patience has always proven to be the best methods towards success. Precisely, brother. I think sister, sorry, and another has added, patience is important without a doubt. This is a very good lesson from the Imam. He says, I could have chosen, but I chose patience. In another narration, he says, I will be so patient, even patience tires of my patience. That's the Imam. So if you're thinking about how do I learn from this khutbah already, Shiqshiqiyah is not just about something which we throw at people who are mukhalif Ali bin Abi Talib. Shiqshiqiyah we apply back to ourselves and think, how patient am I when I'm given a duty to do?
Exactly.
Where's my sabr, Anything else you wanted to add, Anwar Uncle, on that point?
Well, the thing is, even, we all know this, that during the time of this first one, and also clearly in the second caliphate, he has said that I would have been killed, I've been dead without Ali's help. So knowing that he is not able to run the country, and whenever he needed Ali, Ali was there. So they couldn't run the country without Ali, yet, they were naming one after another. The prime example is when Prophet passed away, they went to a meeting to decide who become next caliph instead of burying the Prophet. Khuda na khasta, if my father passes away, even the whole world is been offered to me, I will go to my father's funeral or take the worldly things, But this is the example, and it is in everybody's book. It's not that just one sect says it. It's in everybody's book. How many people are present at Prophet Muhammad's burial?
Anyway, exactly. No, what you have said, it hits the mark, definitely. And on the appointment, we'll come to that period of history. The Imam covers it and says how he feels even in that period. So we'll come to it. Are there any other points anyone else would like to share at this point about what has come so far, about either sabr or what you have heard in Shiqshiqiyah or your general approach? Anyone? Okay. So Imam is in a very reflective mood. He's looking back at history and he's reliving those moments. The first moment he's relived was when Khalifa was taken. And when he had to choose at that time what to do, and that same choice he makes every day. Sometimes we think that we make a choice once and we stick to it, but the truth is there are some choices we make every moment, that we continuously choose to be in a certain situation or tolerate something or accept someone. These are continuous choices. Every day it hurts him, not just the day when the Holy Prophet passed away, not just the day when the tragedy happened to Sayyidah Fatima sallallahu alaiha, not just those days. Every day he is reliving and going through that same decision and affirming it with his strength of aqidah. Maybe that's one of the reasons why this is a greater example than the others, because Khaybar happened once, Khandaq happened once, Badr happened once. This happens every single moment for Ali ibn Abi Talib. That same
And,
Ali
and
who can at any moment take out his sword and destroy those in front of him chooses not to.
and also, if someone is injured by a sword, that sort of zakham
Yeah.
can be cured in a week or two. But to go through a mental pain every single day is much more. I don't know what to use.
Yeah.
And so yes, now we can feel, we can see how he felt for so long, being in that position and kept quiet for the sake of Ummah. Like you said, if you have taken his sword, you could have killed all three in one day. No big deal for him.
I agree. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, brother. Okay. Imam continues. He says, how did it feel at that time for him to be in this situation? فَيَا عَجَبًا, it was strange for me. He says, it was strange. What was strange? بين هو يستقيلها في حياته إذ أخذها لآخرها بعد وفاته. That while he was in his khilafah, the first one, he wished to be released from it. He used to say that I wish it was not on me. But بعد wafat, after his death, he had already given it to somebody else. He'd confirmed it to another person. Meaning now, Abu Bakr has died and Umar has become the new Khalifa. لَشَدَّ مَا تَشْتَرَنْ ذَرْعَيْهَا. And the two of them shared its udders strictly among themselves. They made Khalifa an animal, which they too drank, and they shared it only amongst themselves. And by doing this, they did something to this institution which the Holy Prophet established. What did they do? Imam continues, فَسَيَرْحَى فِي حَوْزَةً خَشْنَاء يَغْلُظُ كَلْمُهَا وَيَخْشُنُ مُسَّحَا. In doing this, they put Khilafah in a very tough enclosure, where now its speech had become proud and its touch had become rough. So what we're seeing now is a dramatic change from the life of the Holy Prophet to the life of the Khulafa in front of the eyes of the Imam. And something wrong is happening to power. And as we will see later in history, because of what's happened now, an open fasiq can become Khalifa later because of what happens right now. Then he continues, وَيَكْثُرُ عِثَارُ فِيهَا الْاعْتِذَارِ مِنْهَا فَصَاحِبُهَا كَرَاكِبْ الصَّغْبَةِ. There were so many mistakes that happened at this time, and even more excuses given at this time. From whom? From the Khalifa. So there was problems happening, sins happening openly, and excuses for those many sins. The example he says was, it was like the one who rides it is the one who rides an unruly camel. If he pulls up the rein of the camel, he slits the noses of it. But if he lets go, he'll be thrown down from it. This was the situation people were in. And another place, Imam says that leadership is like a lion. At any time, it can throw off the rider. And in these cases, they couldn't control Khilafah. Either they would be too firm with it and they would hurt it, like you are slitting the nostril, which is used to control the beast, or they would let go and it would go wherever it wanted to go. And here's the problem. It wasn't confined to them. The Imam continues, فَمَنْ يَنَّاسِ لِأَمْرِ اللَّهِ, and the people by the power of Allah, بِخَبْطِ وَشِمَاسِ وَتَلُونَ وَأَعْتِرَاض. They became involved in recklessness, in wickedness, in unsteadiness, in deviation, because they saw their leaders do the very same. And by seeing their leaders commit open sins, for example, and issues and not follow Rasulullah, it was so much more normal for them not to. Very good example. If Imam Ali alayhi salam is being cursed on the pulpit of Rasulullah, then why would someone walking say salam to Ali ibn Abi Talib? Do you see the link now? Do you see the climate now? We are, what's that narration from the Imam? The way you are, you will be governed. One of the Imam says. So now the people are changing. They're drifting away from the whole message and ethos of the Holy Prophet in a matter of years, and then decades and dozens, and then within one generation, there's been an entire flip. And yes, everything is leading towards Ashura. And at this time, the Imam sees in front of him, the people are changing. They're becoming different. They're becoming cruel. Are there any questions before I continue about this? If so, please mention a question now, inshallah, before I continue.
This, no excuse not to.
If somebody's speaking, I can't fully hear you. I've seen you unmuted, but I can't hear you. Could you speak closer to the mic?
Yeah, probably planning the whole day of lifetime without you. That's all right.
Okay. Okay. So this is what the Imam's going through. Okay, this is how he's feeling. But like we saw before, فَصَبَرْتُ, I was patient. I remained patient. على طول مدة وشدة المحنة. Even though it was a long period of time and this trial was hard for me, I remained patient. إذا مضى لسبيله وجعل في جماعتي زعم إني أحدهم. Until the first of them died. He went to his way. And this whole matter was brought together in a group. They came together to think about what to do next. فَيَا اللَّهِ لِلشَّوْرَةِ. Oh my goodness, by Allah, Imam says. وَتَعْرَضَ الرَّيْبُ في مع الأول منهم. Why would they consider that before I was the first from them and now I'm just one of them to choose the next leader? I went from being awwal to minhum. How strange, he says. That imagine Imam in another place says, I used to pray before you knew it was wajib. I used to pray. Imam Ali is awwal, the first to respond to the Prophet, the first in the battle, the first in all these accounts. And now after the death of Abu Bakr, he's called to a council amongst everyone like he's minhum, like he's one of them. He says, how strange this was for me. حتى صرت أقران إلى هذه نظران. Where was any doubt about me? Where was any doubt from me about my maqam, about who I am, about my position, whether you didn't know who I was? لكني أسففت إذ أسفوا وترت إذ تاروا. I am the one, he says, I decided that I will remain low when they are low. And I will fly high when they fly high. Meaning, I cooperated. I was patient throughout this time. Imam continues. فَسَغَى رَجُلٌ مِّنْهُمْ لِذِغْنِهِ. One of them, he turned away from me because he hated me from that group, the council to choose the next leader. وَمَالَ الْآخِرُ لِسِحْرِهِ. Another turned away from me because of his family, because of the in-law relation which he had. There was one reason, another reason why they would not choose why I should be the leader. إِلَّا أَنْ قَامَ ثَالِثًا قَوْمٍ. Until the third of them now stands. Now Uthman has stood. نَافِجًا حِذْنَيْهِ بَيْنَ نَثِيلِهِ وَمُعْتَلَفِهِ. About him, he rose, heaving with breasts between his dung and fodder. This is the description the Imam gives for Uthman at this time. وَقَامَ مَعْهُ بَنُو أَبِيهِ. And his family rose with him. The family of Uthman, يعني Banu Umayyah, they all rose against him, alongside him. يَخْذُومُنَا مَالَ اللَّهِ خَذْمَ الْعَبِلِ نبتة الربيح إلى أن نكثت عليه فتله. They all rose together to together join to usurp the wealth, the mal of Allah. In the same way, a camel devours its own foliage of its own spring, of its own children. And then he says that rope broke down then. وَجْحَزَ عَلَيْهِ عَمُلٌ وَكَبَّتْ بِهِ بِتْنَتُهُ. That rope had been broken now, finally, because of their gluttony. And it brought them down to prostrate. It made them low. So now we've seen Khilafah transfer from one hand to the second to the third. The first one, Imam says, hated me. The second developed hatred through family relations. Imagine with Banu Umayyah and the history they've had with Banu Hashim. The third rose to usurp wealth. That was his reality. He wanted to take wealth. In fact, we even have a narration of when Umar is about to die. And Aisha comes to him and says to him, choose a leader after you, elect a leader, choose them yourself. No consultation, no election, nothing. You choose. And that's when he chooses Uthman by appointment. Or that's when there's a select council is made, in which it was always going to be that choice because of who was on that decision-making body. And the Imam is just experiencing this around him, seeing things get from bad to worse. But his decision again was patience. I remained low when they were low. Yani if they were at this level, I didn't rise above them. And when they acted, I complied with them. Imagine how hard that was for the Imam. We're learning about the sabr which he went through. Like, imagine how hard that was. Now, at this time, we are seeing a series of councils come. And in each council, people are going to choose the next leader. Sometimes they call Imam Ali in the council, sometimes they don't. Saqifa, they did not call him. In other councils, they did call him. Why? Because each group which split from that time wanted to use Ali bin Abi Talib in a certain way. Okay? Some would say that he is a supporter because his family supports and pays allegiance to Abu Bakr. Others would say, no, he is the family of the Prophet and this Khalifa is also in the family, so he supports his family. They'd make all different arguments for him. Today, non-Muslim thinkers still mischaracterize the mentality of the Imam. They say things like Ali was part of the council, he could have chosen to rise and he didn't. Or they say other things, for example, that the family of Ali ibn Abi Talib did not have political intelligence to rise of their own. Even now they're writing these issues because they did not understand the level of patience at that time. But the Imam describes it beautifully. I lay low when they were low and I rose when they arose. I was with them. I remained in that same mentality. In another narration from Al-Jahiz, he narrates, Imam says, that when the two passed away, the third rose from them like a crow whose courage is confined to his belly. It would have been better if his wings had been cut and his head severed. That's how harmful the third of them was, specifically for this ummah. But the Imam again was patient. Okay. Are there any questions so far about this period of history we've come through? We've covered Khalifa 1, Khalifa 2, and now the life of Khalifa 3. And Imam is experiencing all these things and sharing his heart with us. What do you respond to the Imam? How do you respond to what he is describing? If there are any points, or if you would like to share them, please do share. Bismillah. No? Okay. At this time, the Imam, he keeps speaking and he says, at this point, famara'ani, nothing would surprise me at this point. Illa, except what? وَالنَّاسُ إِلَى كَعُرْفِ سَبْعُمْ. When finally the people and the crowd rushed towards me. Now they came to me. And the Imam says, يَنْثَلُونَ عَلَى مِنْ كُلِّ جَانِبٍ. The crowd rushed to me and they advanced to me like a hyena towards every side, every janib of every side of me. They came towards me. حَتَّى لَقَدْ وُتِيَ الْحَسَنَانِ. Until my sons Hassan and Hussein were feeling crushed by the crowds coming towards me. So after everything, now they come to Ali ibn Abi Talib. They came to me. And my clothes were becoming torn from the shoulders, from the force of the people now coming towards me. In this rush, they had come towards me. مجتمعين حول كرابيذها على الغنم, like animals, like a herd, like a ghanam, which had now crowded around me and collected like sheep and goat. فلما نحثت بالأمر. So when I took power at this time now, after everything, they broke from me. A group from among them, after rushing towards me, now broke. They cut away from me. For example, and I'll stop for a second, the Khawarij broke. The followers, the wife of the Prophet broke. Abdullah bin Zubair left, fled. Some people didn't want to even be involved in Khilafah at that time. One group broke. وَمَرَقَتْ أُخْرَى. And another of them started disobeying. وفسق آخرون كأنهم لم يسمع الله سبحانه يقول. And it is as if when I took this power, the rest of them started acting so wrongfully. They forgot the words of Allah, in which He says in the verse of Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, تِلْكَ الدَّارُ الْآخِرَةُ آخرة نجعلها الذين لا يريدون علوا في الأرض ولا فسادا والعاقبة للمتقين. That the abode of the hereafter, Darul Akhirah, we assign it to those people who don't exalt themselves fil ard, on this earth, neither do they do fasad or make mischief. It is indeed the end which is for the muttaqi. Have they not read this verse of Quran? The Imam says, but by Allah they heard it, they understood it, but because of this dunya and this world appearing glittering in their eyes, it seduced them. Okay, so at this point in history, the Imam has gone through the period of time when he, in his life, looks around. He's used to being the Imam, but not the Khalifa. And people paying allegiance to the very people who would curse him and would argue against him. Even though they would sometimes praise him and cause him for help, they had no love for him in their hearts. And suddenly the people flipped. The whole mob, after the death of Uthman, rushed towards Imam Ali alayhi salam, crushing him with such force that he could feel his clothes being torn, his sons around him feeling the sensation of the mob now changing and turning as it turns. I would like to ask all of you a question. What do we learn about the human mentality of the people at that time in the way they are acting? At one moment, they're ignoring Ali ibn Abi Talib. On another moment, they are rushing towards him as a herd. What do we learn about people from the way they embraced Ali at this moment? That's a question for you. Please do consider and answer, inshallah. Think to yourself, what do you learn about the human mind, about how people work, how they were at that time? What kind of people were they? When on one moment they're prepared to follow the people who usurp the right of the Imam, and the next moment they are so passionately coming towards him. What do we learn? Sanakal, I see that you have unmuted, but I cannot hear you if you are going to contribute. Someone is unmuted, but I can't hear. Maybe it's my internet. Is someone speaking? I don't know if I can hear it.
If no one is speaking, can I say?
Yeah, please go ahead. It's a book club, so please do share your reflections reading,
Yeah,
inshallah.
Well, I may be totally wrong, but because I mean, it's very difficult to understand people's mentality and the way they think, especially 1400 years ago, when they used to bury their daughters alive. What were their thinking? What were their attitude, and so on? But they have seen three rulers, one after another, and they have seen them all fail. They've seen their rights been taken away, and they have seen that Imam Ali did not rise and did not interfere. So now maybe they had enough. And even the rulers, like Imam Ali said, that I will be patient until the patience runs out of patience.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what happened, that they could not control, people had enough, so the only choice was Ali. And now, even if Imam Ali was saying, I don't want it anymore, they forced him to take the control, take the reins, because maybe, as we say in English, the country was going to the dogs.
So they got tired. It was too much for them, and they were getting frustrated, do you think, with the management before?
Yes.
Okay, this is a very good approach. What other approaches do we have? So somebody, Sister Rizwan has written, they have just used Imam for their convenience. Okay, so a different approach now. They are using the Imam because maybe they have no one else, or because there's an excuse for him now when it wasn't him before. Something has changed in their mind. Now they think he's worthy, whatever, but they're using him for their convenience. Okay, so another good opinion by Sister Rizwana. There's a comment from a sister privately who says it is that they were just arrogant and only chasing wealth. Okay, so maybe it is arrogance, that we did not choose you before, and now we've chosen you. Show us what you can do, maybe. Or they're chasing wealth because Ali was very good with wealth. And if it's true that Uthman's time saw massive corruption, which it did, and Ali was known for redistributing wealth, the public treasury, to the extent when we looked at the letter to Malik al-Ashtar, where the Imam, in a different sermon 15, the Imam says, even if slaves had been purchased with wealth that was taken by the government before, I would buy those slaves back and free them again. Remember he said that? Imam Ali Islam cares so much about making sure wealth is distributed, like you said to Malik. So maybe they have lost money and they have lost wealth, and they think that this person will, bring them money. That's a good opinion, sister. Sister Islam has written they were hypocrites and directionless. Okay. So maybe there's no logic to it. It's another good point. Maybe they just sway in the wind. This person, that person, that person. Imam Ali Islam has spoken about the crowd like this, that they are so flippant. Abu Abdullah has said this, that when deen is easy, everyone is religious. But when it's hard, the mu'mineen are few. So maybe at that time, they had no principle. Sister Nadine has written that reading this sermon makes me feel very sad that these people don't understand the value position of the Imam. They seem hypocritical and seem to be easily swayed, going where the wind blows. Exactly that point, sister. They don't have those principles where they know what is right, or they are able to act on what's right. Right? So this example you mentioned, they go where the wind blows. The wind blows towards Abu Bakr, they follow Abu Bakr. They do many narrations for how they believe he was the closest companion. The wind blows to Umar, okay, Banu Umayyah now get their day. The wind blows to Uthman. Okay, now we have to justify the actions of him. And by the way, Brother Bilal was saying in the podcast, which will come out inshallah tomorrow on the YouTube channel, the Ahlul Bayt spoke more openly against Uthman in public than they did against the first two. But the people swayed towards them. And now they think Ali is just like the others. He's just like them. He's a companion. He's minhum, they thought. They forgot that he was awwal, he was first. And they list his qualities alongside the other qualities. Oh, Ali is just one of them. So now we follow Ali ibn Abi Talib and see how it goes. And you know what's proof of this point? After Imam Ali, when Imam Hassan should be the Imam, so many of them turned to Muawiyah. How similar are these two figures, Ali and Muawiyah? So different. But the same people will call Khalifa to both of them. It makes no sense. And the Imam, in one of these letters, the Imam says that why can that name be put alongside my name, about Muawiyah's name? How can these two things even be compared? But amongst the people, they were so easily swayed, they'd go from one to the other. It's a major issue. It's a real lack of character. And maybe this is mob mentality. Maybe people are like this, that when it comes to leadership, we don't have a consistent approach and expectation of authority over us. We're more easily prepared to just sway and go with who speaks the loudest or is nearest to us. What voice is closest to my family? Who did my family support? In my center, who's been given power? I'll just follow them. Or, in larger speaking, in politics, who's the leader? If they're an authority, I follow them. No, we are not supposed to be like this, to sway, like herd, literally a herd. Any of you who have been to farms or live in that environment, or you have seen, there's no mentality or logic in the movement of a crowd or a herd of animals. One, okay, it might go towards grass. The other might follow that one. The other might follow that one. Soon the one at the back has no idea why it's following the one at the front. Have you seen birds where when birds are flying in a flock, one might change direction. Perhaps it sees shelter, or it sees some guidance, or it sees a place to rest, or maybe it sees prey. And then another follows it. And then all of the flock suddenly will move position with that one. The ones in the middle have no idea what the one in the front has seen. So if in a scenario where they're being misguided or guided, they wouldn't even know the difference. So when you subject yourself to any leader in front of you just for the sake of their leadership, you will see Ali is the same as the others. But no, Ali ibn Talib is so radically different in his essence to the others, they would not know. So that's a very good point, Sister Nadine. So the Fatimas added blind following. Exactly, blind following. If they had looked at the narrations, they would have seen so many good reasons to follow Ali ibn Abi Talib and so many bad reasons to oppose the others. But they just wouldn't have that support. So some ulama believe the reason why Ali Islam did not rise up in Badr was because he didn't have that support. He didn't have those companions, or enough of the companions to fight with him. Look at how few people attended the burial of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Look at how few people maintained their loyalty to Ahlul Bayt when things got difficult. We're going to rely on them to win this issue? No. No. Another brother has added, Sister Fatima said they just wanted a leader but not an imam. A very good point. And the reason why they wanted a leader and not an imam is because they're used to any leader being khalifa, but they're not used to the imam being the khalifa. They're not used to it. They have seen so much wrongdoing being done from the mimbar of Rasulullah, it no longer has any value to them as a member of piety, a member of taqwa. Because look at what's happened with it. If they have seen open sin, or they have seen oppression of people's rights, or a common example, the usurping of people's wealth, money being taken, taxes being over collected, property being allocated to governors in areas where they have no right to rule. When Malik is sent to Egypt, Imam says to him, there have been some bad leaders who have run this place before you, and some good leaders. And the people will look at you with some skepticism. What kind of leader are you going to be? They had no longer had the expectation the one in authority over us has the will of Allah and the good interest of us in mind. So when an imam comes, they don't recognize him anymore. That they see that this is so similar to the fragrance of Rasulullah. They don't see it. Another brother has written in the private chat, they might have been so guilty and angry at themselves for not picking the right persons in the first place. They want to save face, good, by forcing the imam. Also shows why the imam was their last resort, and they are like sheep in their mentality, similar to people of Kufa at the time of Imam al-Hussein, all talk, no action or sincerity. Good point, brother. Good point. Because the dhikr, the fadail of Ali ibn Abi Talib are so undeniable, and they're happening around you if you're in that time. It's like, okay, fine, if he's so great, let's see what he can do. We have no one else. There's literally no, I mean, if they think about it logically, they could have given Khilafah to the relatives of Uthman, and there were many other lesser companions, like all companions are compared to Ali ibn Abi Talib. But they just thought, well, let's give it to Ali now, because we can't deny every attribute of his. And even those who had no negativity towards Ali ibn Abi Talib, they could easily be swayed by the right time. The timing is right time for Ali ibn Abi Talib. But like the brother has said, no sincerity, no plan. That community would sway. So that's why the Imam says that, behold, by Allah who splits the grain and caused living beings to grow, if the people hadn't actually come to me, if the supporters had not kept arguing for me, if there'd been no pledge of Allah, and there would be no, the problems of gluttony had not been caused to this extent, and the rights of the oppressed had not been taken away by the Khalifa to this extent, if that had not happened, لَقَيْتُ حَبْلَهَا عَلَى غَارِبِهَا, I would have thrown the ropes of this Khalifa back onto you. I wouldn't have even taken it. I don't want this. Islam doesn't need Khilafah. I wouldn't have taken it if it had not been for the issues caused by those before and the rights of the oppressed which had not been respected. وَلَا سَقَيْتُ آخِرَهَا بِكَأْسِ أَوَّلِهَا, and I would have treated the first of you the same as I treated the last of you. Like I didn't accept then, I wouldn't accept now. Like I would have taken then, I would take it now. You wouldn't have seen any activity in me. وَأَلْفَيْتُهُمْ دُنْيَاكُمْ هَذِهِ أَزْهَدَ عِنْدِي مِنْ أَفْتَةِ عَنْزًا, and you would have seen that the dunya in the eyes of me, in the eyes of Ali ibn Abi Talib, this world of yours is no better to me than the sneezing of a goat. This dunya, this khilafah which you want, to me I see as a sneezing of a goat. It's nothing. It is the smallest possible utterance that could be made. In another narration, the Imam says that this khilafah to me is like, I think it's a bone in the hands of a leper, or like something which has no utility to anyone. In another narration, he's fixing sandals, his shoes. And he says to someone, if I can't establish a just government on earth, this khilafah is to me like these broken sandals I'm fixing. It means nothing to me. The only value for Ali ibn Abi Talib for political leadership is to implement the will of Allah where it has not been done before. That's his aim. He doesn't want power. He doesn't want prestige. He doesn't want responsibility, or in terms of people making responsible for worldly affairs. He doesn't need that. He's the Imam. Imamat is far above siyasat. It's only and only to fulfill the actions of the institution of Imamat. Whereas our Holy Prophet has said, in addition to this, Hassan and Hussein are Imams whether they sit or they stand. Whether they sit or stand. Whether if one does sulh or one uprises, they are still Imams. Imamat is not linked to political authority. An Imam can be on the battlefield. An imam can do peace treaty. An imam can be at Karbala. An imam can be in Medina writing du'as for the people. An imam can be in the houses of Medina, of Imam al-Sadiq, Imam al-Baqir. An imam can be in the government of Banu Abbas and Imam al-Ridha. An imam can be in the house arrest or in prison or under secret underground network. An imam can be in dhuhur. An imam can be waiting dhuhur in ghaiba at this very minute. His imamat becomes no greater or no lesser based on his worldly maqam. His greatness is guaranteed by Allah. The only thing which changes is the circumstance. The Imam think of Imamat as one living organism, beginning from the life of Ali ibn Abi Talib and continuing now in the living, breathing body and soul of our Imam. And it moves and acts based on circumstance. If it needs to, the Imam is prepared to go to war. If he needs to, the Imam will go to peace treaty. He doesn't need to proclaim in a specific way his leadership. Your Imam is as much a leader now as in Ghaiba today as he will be tomorrow when he goes to Makkah and says, Ya ayyul alam ana al-imam al-qaim. I am the Imam and I've returned. He's the same person in both of these circumstances. We sometimes judge a person by their form. How do they look? And I judge them based on this. But no, Ahlul Bayt should be judged on their reality. Where are they from? Who gave them their authority? What's their role in this world? And then I move myself based on them. So then now I know if Imam needs me to do taqiyya, I will do taqiyya. If Imam needs me to give my charity, I will give charity. I'm now able to situate myself based on where he needs me to be because I recognize more about what he is. I don't make the Imam in a certain way. So when the Imam does go on ghaiba, I don't lose my iman. I don't lose my faith. Because I know to myself, Imamat is such a flexible and dynamic concept and reality that the Imam, no matter what situation he's in, maintains his authority over me. And as Agha Behjat says, sees me and hears me as I speak, even before some ulama argue. That doesn't change when he goes in ghaiba. And when he marches with only 72 people to fight on the plains of Karbala, I don't leave him when the numbers are few. Just like I didn't love him anymore when the crowds flocked towards him after the death of Uthman. My Imam, who is one being, one celestial entity, demands my absolute loyalty. And this we learn from Shiqshiqiyah how the Imam is speaking. By speaking his heart, we see how he thinks and how he is, and how he becomes no. In fact, Imam Ali al-Islam, we learn more about his greatness from how he struggles in this matter. Like we see the reality of Ali ibn Abi Talib, he finds it hard. Ali ibn Talib, as Sayyidah Fatima says when she's on her deathbed, Ali, I know you. You are hard outside in the battlefield. You are rough exterior, but your heart is soft inside. I see it in you. This is Ahlul Bayt and the Imams. So in this brief gap, we have this moment of Shiqshiqiyah, the Imam is speaking and speaking his heart and walking or sitting with a very small group. While he's talking, another random person comes at this time and gives him a piece of paper. He becomes distracted and he stops with the sermon and it ends abruptly. That's the end. So Ibn Abbas, who's there, says, Ya Imam, I wish you would continue and keep speaking. We are learning so much about Imamat, about you, from this moment. Please keep speaking. And the Imam says, no, I will not speak. Tilka shiqshiqatun haddarat thumma qarrat. This was a shiqshiqat. This was the foam which was released, which gushed out from a camel. It came out and it's gone back in now. It's done. That's where Shiqshiqiyah comes from. It's that foam which bubbles up and then goes inside. That's the meaning of this word. And that's the reason I mentioned to Sister Nadine. The reason that it's called Shiqshiqiyah is because of this. Shiqshiqat is the foam of a camel, which involuntarily comes out and then goes back inside. Imam says this whole sermon was like that foam. Came out and it's gone back in. And Ibn Abbas then says, there's nothing I regretted more than when Ali ibn Abi Talib stopped speaking on the sermon of Shiqshiqiyah. I regret that the most. If only he had kept speaking. And that's the end of the report from Sharif Radi. So now, my dear brothers and sisters, you have heard from start to finish the most celebrated and famous sermon of Nahjal Balagha in terms of fame of Shiqshiqiyah. I want to ask all of you one question. Before I ask you a question, I will first hear any reflections. How do you feel listening to this sermon, coming to the end of it? What are your impressions of the Imam? What have you learned from the sermon of Shiqshiqiyah itself? Sister Fatima has written, it's heartbreaking indeed. Indeed, the loneliness of Imam Ali al-Islam is seen in this sermon like it's seen in so much of Nahjal Balagha. It's a snapshot of a man in pain trying to do his duty to Allah. Any other thoughts? How do you feel coming to the end of this sermon?
It feels like it's a chapter of Masa'ib for from Imam Ali's life. And I would like to thank you most sincerely for bringing us together to read and discuss this most valuable and important sermon, which is the only sermon where Imam Ali has poured his heart out, basically.
Yeah, I thank you for being in this journey, and you're right. It is he somehow feels safe enough with those around him to speak like this, but then he stops. Like he knows he can't keep speaking. He knows he can't carry on like this. And for a brief moment, we see exactly what's going on. At least what we don't see in the exterior when he's giving judgments for Umar or when he is doing managing the Baytul Mal for Uthman. But what we don't see in all of those moments is how he feels. And now we see it. Now we see it and we feel it ourselves, like you mentioned. For anyone who loves Ali bin Abi Talib, do you know how he's lonely? He's lonely because he can't even speak the rest of how he feels. Like he has to stop. And he's told, no, please keep singing. I can't keep talking, he says. It came out and it's done now. And yeah, that is sad. That is sad. Definitely. I have the same emotion to you, dear brother. Anyone else who feels that way, or anyone else who has a feeling at the end of this sermon that you have now read? So if you do, again, please feel comfortable and use this space, inshallah, to share how you feel. But I want to mention one final narration before we finish. So you might be thinking that, okay, here's this sermon. There's only a few people who were there, but it would have been narrated. And in fact, there are, I think, 27 independent chains for this. So many people knew about it. Sheikh Saduq, it's in Al-Amali, Sheikh Mufid has it narrated. Many narrators. It is widespread, okay? You might think, well, if the people knew about this, why didn't they finally hear the Imam, learn about him, and then like now they change their ways? Now they listen. A sister has just asked, so had the Imam been made the Khalifa during the sermon? Yes. The Imam was in Khilafah when this happened. Because reflecting back on everything that had come before, he's in his role of authority and feeling, like I mentioned, so alone. To sister who asked the question in direct message. So he's gone through this. You might think to yourself, the people who have heard this now, why don't they realize and change their ways? Especially when the Imam has said the thing which has taken you away from the Quran, the verse I mentioned, is that you love this dunya, you love this world. It seduced you. You chose it over me. You chose it over will of Allah. Why didn't the companions of the Imam and the others at that time, when hearing him speak like this, then decide to change their ways so that when Imam Hassan comes into power, they would have accepted him? Why did they not carry through on the words of this sermon? So there's an answer to this by one of our other Imams, but I'll ask you, what do you think the answer could be? Why was this not enough to change and flip everything in the way your heart has changed now? Listen to it. Why didn't it change the hearts of people at the time? Why did it not change? If we put it in context, what happens right after this? The death of the Imam al-Hassan, Muawiyah, the civil war, the fitna, the sulh, the death of Imam al-Hassan, the assassination of the Imam, Abu Abdullah's imamate, his patience, Ashura. That's the timeline. So if this had been listened to, we would have a very different trajectory of history, but it wasn't listened to. Why? Why didn't they listen to the Imam? Why was this not enough for the people at that time, do you think, to hear the Imam speak like this? I said an Imam answers. Maybe you're thinking, well, if the Imam's going to answer it, I don't want to give an answer to what the Imam might say. I'll just say the narration. So one of the companions comes to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, and he mentions a question very similar to this. Abu Basir. He mentions if Imam Ali alayhi salam had spoken so openly, he doesn't mention Shiqshiqiyah, but he says had told his companions about what was happening and knowledge of the future. Okay, why did the Imam? Why do people not listen to him? Why do they not change? Okay, so Imam Sadiq alayhi salam responds to Abu Basir, and the narration is with a little bit of anger, or in what sounds like anger, and says to him, how is it possible if the people didn't want to listen? Meaning, if the people didn't want to accept, why would this have happened? Yani, it's on the people. The Imam might speak and say and open up about the future and what's going to happen in the reality. But Sadiq says it's on the people to accept this, not on the Imam. So then Abu Basir says, Ya Imam, ruhi fidaka, may my soul be sacrificed to you. Why don't you share with us about our fate? Tell us about our future, what's going to happen after us. You're the Imam. If Imam Ali Islam has this knowledge where he can speak about, what happened before and the people are being deceived and all these things, why don't you just tell us what's going to happen to our future? What's going to happen to us after you, for example? Tell us. And Imam Sadiq says that door has been closed. And it was opened slightly by Aba Abdullah al-Hussein ibn Ali on the 9th night of Muharram, when he told each of his companions how they will die. Only a little that door was opened, but now it's closed. So at this time, we understand now, Imamate, the true knowledge of the Imam is a secret. It's a secret. And like the brother has said, people were so used to an unjust way of life, they couldn't handle the adl, they couldn't handle it. And most people can't handle the truth. So as Mama Sadiq says, I have, that door has been closed now. Only briefly it was opened by Abu Abdullah. When? On the 9th night of Muharram. When he brings each companion to him and tells to him, tomorrow you will die for me in this place. And tomorrow I will see you on this area. For Abbas, you will be dying on the Furat for me. Even the children, this is the time when Hazrat Qasim says, what about me? And then Abu Abdullah says, how do you find death? And he says, Al-Maut, death for you is ahla min al-asal, it's sweeter than honey. And then Abu Abdullah says, Qasim, even you. And one moment he goes through all of them. This is a very slight door of knowledge, which the Ahlul Bayt very rarely share with us. And now we're coming to some of these secrets which the Imams don't often share, like Ilmul Ghaib. Why do we say about Sayyidah Fatima, about our mother, why do we say about her that وَالسِّرُ الْمُسْتَعَوْدَهُ فِيهَا, I beseech you also by the secrets buried with you or kept with you. There is some secrets with Sayyidah Fatima which we don't share and speak openly and publicly. Even our ulama don't know the end of the reality of Sayyidah Fatima. Or another example, Imam Ali says, the Holy Prophet opened for me 1,000 doors of knowledge. So someone says, how many of those doors have been shared with his Shia? And the answer was 2. 2 of those doors have been shared with us. But there are so many other bab min abwab al-ilm which the Imams have not opened for us and they keep closed, like this one. And sometimes, just sometimes, we see a small opening in the knowledge of the Imams, like Shiqshiqiyah, like Ashura, like Sayyidah Fatima's khutbah and her reality, like these few moments where we can glimpse and gaze on the Noor of Ahlul Bayt in a more pure form. Now, our eyes can't handle the rest of it. وَقْهُ النَّظْرِ وَنَظْرَةٍ مِّنِّي عَلَيْهِ. Ya Allah, give my eyes the pleasure of seeing the face of my Imam, of our 12th Imam. But our eyes sometimes have done sins, our eyes have not become worthy yet, our eyes have not been through the process by which we are able to hold the image of the Imam in our eyes. That's why when we say, Assalamu alaikum ya Abu Abdullah, we're told Abu Abdullah always responds. But when have you heard him respond? Rarely. Some people have, where they hear the response of Abu Abdullah to them, some ulama and some just good, honest people who worked at themselves. They learned from Shiqshiqiyah, they learned from these examples to have an effect on them. And I really hope and pray that all of us on our own individual journeys, we take provision from Ahlul Bayt. Every word they say is a treasure on our journey. And we don't know which word or which story or which occasion will trigger the opening of a door between me and Allah. The veils I have placed between me and God, I may be able to open some of them just by a phrase here or a phrase there, or a verse of Quran here or a verse of Quran there. This life is taking provision for this journey. And Shiqshiqiyah is provision for us. This sermon, which Imam Zamana himself has said, I want you to memorize it, told Agha Marashi Najafi, I want you to learn it. This is provision for us on our journeys. Brother Ali has written, our communities have brushed the perfect picture of the Imam, so much so that we don't even realize how much pain the Imam had to endure. We always listen to the Fadal of the Imam, and I wish this knowledge was shared with us on the Mimbar so everyone is aware of the Imam's pain. Yeah, there's a role of the Mimbar for this, inshallah. There's a role for book club, there's a role for our own research. And I agree that we need to learn more about the truth of the Imam as much as we can bear. And we come to a point we can't bear any longer, we stop because we are limited. Even our reading of the words of the Imam and Nahjal Balagha is limited. That's why I encourage all of you to reflect, inshallah. So if you have been following the book club, especially this sermon, read it again. Read it again in your own time. Sermon 3 of Nahjal Balagha, this very special khutbah of the Imam, and just see how you feel. Reread it. I'm telling you that in rereading it, in teaching it, I have found new observations from it. And if you're interested further, please subscribe to the Monthly Reflections YouTube channel, where this discussion we're having now is going to be uploaded, like all of the book clubs. And there's an advanced discussion on Shiqshiqiyah, which will be uploaded inshallah tomorrow or maybe the day after. See it inshallah, and you can listen to more and ponder more on it. Okay, are there any questions, Shiqshiqiyah, before we finish? Are there any comments or questions at the end of the book club today?
No comments, just thank you so much indeed for
Thank you.
bringing knowledge to us.
Thank you, inshallah. This is all with the ulama who have discussed Nahjal Balagha and the research which has been done. It is an honor to share it with you and hear your reflections and put it back into the research. So inshallah, we're in this journey together, all of us, definitely. And next week our journey continues by looking at so we've looked at the Asul ad-Din, mashallah. We've looked at this dunya. We are learning more about the Imam. Now I want to know how I take from Imam alayhi salam, from Nahjal Balagha. So today's the 7th of the book clubs. We have 3 more. We have next week, the week after, and then the week after, inshallah, and then that's the end. So I want to focus on the following 3 weeks in actually applying many of these principles to our lives. So next week we're looking at taqwa, at having true cognizance of God, fear of God, and what it looks like to learn taqwa from Ali ibn Abi Talib in Nahjal Balagha. Okay, so please look at sermon 198 of Nahjal Balagha, 198 in the copy of the Al-Islam. So if you have a different copy with different numbers, look at that copy to know the different ones. And it's going to be on Wednesday, inshallah. Thank you to my dear father for putting in the comment. Next Wednesday, we're back at the normal time, 7:30 UK standard time. So if you're in different time zones, please bear that in mind. And we'll carry on that day. Sermon 198, in which we'll continue looking at taqwa and how I can be a God-fearing Shia of Ali ibn Abi Talib based on the words of Imam Ali Islam in Nahjal Balagha. Okay, that's it, inshallah. Thank you so much to everyone. Take care, inshallah. I will see you next Wednesday. Please take care of yourself. Ma'asalam, khuda hafiz. And remain your dua, please. Remain your prayers. Inshallah, jazakumullah to all of you.
Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah.
Eid Mubarak in advance.
Khair Mubarak. Thank you so much, sister. Thank you. Thank you. Take care, everyone. Eid Mubarak, and take care. And we'll see you on Wednesday, inshallah. في أمان الله.